Welcome to the first edition, the maiden voyage of Steel and Whiskey, where we're just going to talk random stuff about steel and software technology and construction with Doug and Michelle.
We are self-isolating salespeople, except today, but we will come to you guys virtually because we can't do it in person right now because we miss you.
So we just wanted to chat a little bit about what we're seeing right now, maybe cover some stuff about detailing and talk steel because we like to talk steel.
And we're all in this together, so this is our way to kind of still connect with you guys even though we can't be out there on the road visiting you in person.
Yes, yes.
So maybe let's start off a little bit just about what we're seeing going on with our customers right now.
Yeah, certainly, man. Just 8 to 5, 7 to 6. I mean, just all day long, people are calling about working remotely, and how do we do that? What's the best way? Certain people sometimes they want to just work local and then share the job. Sometimes they want to network. There's no wrong answer. There's a lot of ways to do it, and you can do it a lot of different ways. So maybe explain some of the options.
We have been getting a lot of calls from our customers that are looking at SDS2 Edge, and this is one way to do it. And actually, on April 9th, I think we'll be having a webinar. We'll actually just demonstrate this to you guys so you can actually see from the moment you log in how you work on SDS2 with a group that's all remote. Hopefully that'll answer a lot of questions that our customers are having right now. So that's one method of doing that. I think you'll see that here in about a week. But another way to do that, you can just share projects on Dropbox. There's ways of doing that, uploading and downloading, but you're not live, so there's not as much of an advantage there. So it really depends on how you're working. But we want to help our customers in the best way we know how, and so that's just to share the information with you guys.
If I've got a customer doing a lot of handrails and stairs, so they may have 3 or 4 guys doing their own separate projects. In that case, working locally and just sharing what you have with the IT department or with an ordering department is fine. And we'll draw. And so whether you have the data here, oops, bad picture, and everybody accessing it, back and forth, so all the data's live all the time, versus more like an attachment to an email, right? And so I'll work on it here, then send it to you, you work on it here, send it back, kind of thing. So certainly 2 different ways to network, and we can certainly do both.
Right. What other things are you hearing from customers right now?
ESTA modeling continues to be something that everybody wants to figure out, and I think hopefully this thing doesn't last forever. It won't last forever, we know that, but they're going to want to get the shop backlog again, and so how to estimate more projects and do it quickly, accurately, so they make a good profit margin, knowing what their costs are.
Right. So you're hearing about ESTA modeling, hearing about Edge. Are you hearing about customers? How's work out there right now?
I think, and I think most everybody would agree to this right now, is like going into this, not that it caught us completely by surprise, but everybody had a pretty good backlog. From large fabricators, maybe had larger backlogs, but everybody had some sort of backlog, and they're working that off now. And so if we can get through the bubble, whatever the bubble is, in a reasonable amount of fashion, I just think it'll be back to that estimating, which is why I think we're seeing a lot of that ESTA modeling or model-based estimating requests, because people are they're working through that backlog, and so they're going to want to fill that up as quick as they can. So if we can get through this in a short order, where we get people back in the marketplace, job sites are still working, I think the model-based estimating will be a pretty hot topic.
Okay. So when we were sitting here thinking about what we could do to come out of this kind of forced downtime, if you will, how we can come out of these things ahead, how can we come out better? We were talking about training detailers. There's still a detailer shortage. Coronavirus isn't changing that, right?
Correct.
So taking some of this time to educate others on kind of I'm not going to say the history of detailing, but maybe why SDS2 does things kind of the way it does, how that can help you train detailers to come out of this with people ready to run and hit the ground, kind of retool your shop, or maybe find that guy that's in your fabrication shop that might be a good transition to be a detailer when you do pick up again, and kind of, I guess, build up education inside of your organization so you can hit the ground running when you're busy again.
Yeah, I mean, interesting point, obviously. I've been doing this for 2-3 decades, working with detailers and fabricators and engineers. And what a detailer is, what has evolved drastically. Some manufacturers, some detailers have kept pace with that, and some haven't. And so, as you said, now when there is lulls or gaps or times to retrain, what a detailer is 30 years ago was lines, arcs, and circles. It was dimensioning, it was just piece marking, it was really kind of drafting 101 was more what a detailer was, making sure the piece counts were correct, dimensions were correct. Now what a detailer is...
Well, I would say a detailer back then, when you're drawing by hand, you're an artist.
Yeah, good point.
Like you're sitting there drawing each line by hand, you're doing a totally different type of work today that detailers are more technicians now, and the software's producing.
Certainly a different type of skill, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're more of a professional in that you've got to know about welding, you've got to know about erection, you've got to know about CNC machines, you've got to know how people order, you've got to know how they load their trucks, you've got to understand engineering information, and there's just a wealth of information that the detailer has been brought into because of the BIM model. Before, when it was just a 2D drawing, what was required of them was a lot less now that it's a model. The model is actually, in fact, its own deliverable. Whereas they used to be just give me the details and the bill of materials. Now the model is this distinct separate product that has to be maintained, and all that metadata with it can take a lot of time. So yes, it's a good time to discuss that and set new priorities for what you provide as a detailer.
So when we talk about your history of detailing back from the old days to current day, we talk about how SDS2 does things.
Yes.
Like the detailing isms that are built into SDS2 that maybe people don't even realize why we do it anymore, because CNC equipment's come along and that sort of thing. Like, let's talk about some of that, because I think that's really interesting information for people to have, and maybe could explain things to newer SDS2 users on why we do things the way we do.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, actually. It's the road is the width of 2 horses' ass, right?
Right.
Because it comes back from the Roman days. Detailing is full of stuff like that. All these standards and the ways we did things was a lot to do with it's the quickest way to do it in manual drafting. And so how could I conceive a system so that I could manually draw it quicker versus what's the most efficient way to fabricate a piece of steel? Because detailing was always a huge bottleneck in every shop when you were more of an artist. When you had to draw lines, arcs, and circles, they had to come up with tricks to make sure that they could do things quickly. And high counts of things, mirror image things. It was very important because it reduced the amount of time to draw the details. But now with automated detailing, automated shop equipment, it's not as critical of a thing. We take this simple thing that everybody knows as gauge in our industry.
Right, so we've got this wonderful whiteboard. Here, draw me an example.
I actually have customers, if you just look at a column and what a gauge is.
It's a really bad column, Doug.
Yeah, thank you. My detailing standards are...
You're not an artist.
I'm not an artist. But we'd certainly, when you would set a mag drill, we'll just go here. Say we had some holes on this side of the column. If you were to set a mag drill and set it up so it could drill holes, you would set it a certain depth and let it run down so you wouldn't have to go in and out. It was the quickest way to do that set of holes. Well, with CNC machinery now, we actually have customers that will have holes kind of go in and out because it doesn't cost them any extra time.
And why are they going in and out, though?
Because they're keeping their connection material with a standard leg, and so as the beam web on a beam, let's say it's a clip angle, as this web thickness changes, then this hole center will change on that column. And so as this gets wider, this will change. Well, they would just as soon keep these consistent, the connection material consistent. Some will put a slot to take care of that, but some fabricators will just go ahead and let the gauge vary, which 30 years ago would have been
unheard of.
Blasphemy.
Right.
Yeah. Other rules that you see in detailing, and it's pervasive, right? Horizontal bracing a lot of times will take from the center of the column. So if you have a brace here, gusset plate. I'm drawing this wrong actually.
Here, why don't we erase and start over? You got it.
I got it.
Okay.
So from the center of the column to the first hole will either be 7 or an iteration of 3 on top of that. Again, just so when it was put in the field, it would always find a way to fit. Today with computer equipment and scribing, you might see, they'll call this G1 for gusset 1, R or L or north or south. Because of the scribing, they can be much more variable and accurate without having to do all that on a drawing.
Right. That's where you get to maybe just presenting fit-up dimensions instead of all the details that you would put on a drawing for when you had to assemble this stuff by hand. Now you just need to fit it up in the shop. So, in that vein, let's think about more detailing learning isms we can talk about here. Because I feel like I've been with the company forever, but we've got kind of some new blood that's coming into SDS2. And so we get to teach more people about steel detailing here. It's kind of fun.
Yes.
And
I'm trying to think
I light up when I think about it. But, well, optimizing your plate thicknesses for
Good.
fabrication is
So
a
good example.
Fabrication ism.
Yeah, and so, this is a whole nother thing, and it goes back to retraining and rethinking what a detailer is. So, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you never would have had the time to design the connections for the entire project and then evaluate what happened. It took so long to develop those connections that you just had the time to do it and get it on paper so it could get to fabrication. Now, we can design the connections in a 5,000 member structure in under a minute.
Yeah.
Once you do that, then you can evaluate what happened. So some fabricators, let's say it's a small enough project and they've got a certain plate thickness. Let's say it's a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 7/8, whatever the plate thickness. They just want to keep that one plate thickness so they can put one size of plate on their plate burner and burn all the plates for the project. Well, in the past you never would have done that. Now you can run the connection design, say, hey, what if I did all my plates, shear plates, gusset plates, base, we did everything around a 7/8 inch plate to see what the impact was. And so that could be quicker.
Or more cost effective.
More cost effective.
For what you're ordering, for what you're going to have on stock.
Some people do that with bolt thicknesses, going from 3/4 to an inch, bypassing a 7/8 bolt thickness.
Right. Then the guys out in the field can't accidentally grab a 7/8 inch bolt and stick in a 1-inch hole. That won't work.
Correct. And some machines, based on fabrication, some machines will make an additional pass for every bolt hole diameter. So as the hole diameter changes, there would be another pass through the machine, so they're just eliminating that pass. And so they just get beams through the drills quicker. Was a way to do it.
Yeah, coming down to optimizing for fabrication.
Optimizing for fabrication. So today, the wealth of information you get so quickly allows you to optimize your fabrication so you can do it in the fastest amount possible. We have customers actually with those robotic welding machines and layout machines that are actually changing the connection types based off of what occurs on a column, for example. So if something occurs on a column, they'll change everything on a column. Whereas, again, manual drafting or pre-BIM, there's no way you would be able to get the information to make that decision.
Right, so they're letting the fabrication efficiency drive almost the design then to a level.
Absolutely.
The connection design.
Certainly connection design and then the drafting. A lot of times drafting would drive fabrication, where now fabrication efficiencies drive drafting a lot more.
Well, the more you can take out for prefabricated in the field, ready to go up, the more savings you have there, right?
Certainly seeing modular too. So modular fabrication and erection, something you never would have considered, now is more capable because you can put it together in the model, ship it in pieces. The less pieces you handle, Most every fabricator I talk to says material handling is a significant cost, if not one of the biggest costs that determine kind of profit loss on the job. So the less pieces we can handle, the less onloading, offloading.
Sure.
The more money.
So with this forced, I don't even want to call it forced downtime. I don't know what to call it. I don't think anyone knows what to call it. How do you talk about this?
Yeah, it's weird. It's physical separation.
Right, I'm sorry, I'm probably too close.
Physical separation.
But this physical separation where everyone's working remote, you're trying to figure out the best way you can to not have it interrupt your business and still make a living. Whether you're a single detailer or a fab shop, how do you take care of your employees? How do you take care of yourself? How do you go forward from this? How do you come out of this ahead? So how do we talk about
and I think
training detailers to be there when we're ready? Because
I certainly think you've seen an underlying of positivity in the last few days. Certainly people wanting to, how do I become better at whatever I am, whether I'm an athlete, whether I'm a steel detailer, whether I'm a fabricator. And so training, begs to be discussed. And it's interesting what a detailer is and how they started. Most of the time when I would talk to someone training a detailer when I first started selling software, they would start them off in 2D because it's a 2D world.
Right.
You would teach them how to what we call scrub drawings, just change a dimension or add a dimension or erase a dimension. This is what I wanted the detail to look like. And so they would work with that, and really good detailers just had this knack. They could see 3D from the 2D.
Right.
Well, today it's almost reversed.
Right, you've got the gaming generation that understands that kind of 3D, and so it's maybe almost even easier to teach someone to build a model. I mean, if you think about it, I came from outside the industry. Yep. It was easier for me to learn how to build the model. I can put beams and columns together based on what you got me drawing here, what elevations, but I know less about how the drawing should look.
Right, and I think you see that, and that may be a trick to rebuilding the detailing population of the next generation is to continue to focus on that gaming aspect, the 3D aspect, and can teach a junior high kid how to build a model. Doesn't know what he's doing, but you can do that and they can adapt to that quickly.
And then teach them what the drawings need to look like after the fact, right?
Exactly, and maybe the 3D models can bring them into the industry, and then that's where you start the apprenticeship. Instead of starting in 2D with people that had great 3D visualization, maybe you start in 3D and teach
the people that had
fabrication.
Great 3D visualization were guys from the shop that they understood how the steel goes together and what the end goal is. Now a lot of times you might be getting kids out of college or out of high school that haven't worked in a shop or don't have that experience. So they don't even understand what the end goal is. So if you can teach them what it should look like in the model, and then explain to them that this is the piece of information that you need to create and this is how it needs to be presented for our guys in the shop, you might be able to train people up quicker.
Yeah, and the better we get and the more intelligent we get at the product, the more successful they'll become.
Right.
Because we can provide all the tools. And I've often said, and I'll say it again, getting electrical engineering software doesn't make me an electrical engineer.
Right.
And getting you a steel detailing software doesn't make you a steel detailer. That knowledge base is very important, and you can be very effective with it as a good steel detailer, but we can learn to train. It's a much easier method to train with a 3D model than it was with 2D drawings.
Just from my own personal experience, learning steel was a lot easier for me in SDS2 because I could see what a W14 by 43 was, right? That made concrete sense to me, and then understanding, it's 14 inches deep, 43 pounds per foot, right? That made sense to me.
Right. To
teach someone that's totally outside the industry how to get into it, going from a model might be easier than actually scrubbing drawings and going in reverse.
Yes. Another thing, as we get better as software providers, for example, so if you look at just this is a plan view, and you've got two beams going into it. This is a beam here, and three beams coming together. So as a manual draftsman learning in the old days, you would draw these beams individually and maybe check them in the model, or check them in an erection drawing. With SDS2, it catches how close these are together, and so it will actually put a long angle on either leg here. And so these two angles here would be what you use in your standard fabricate, the ones that are in your bin of angles, the standard fabricator angles, and carrying that long leg. And so these are things that the software will help a beginner detailer catch, or like a
and
handshake
it'll catch
connection.
for them, so they won't notice that, but it's going to reduce in fewer operations in the shop, so less labor,
Right,
and you're not going to have to switch to a shear plate connection that's going to cost you more in welding.
right.
Okay,
Safety connections.
Right.
Might be one.
I got a pen. All right. Tell me what to draw, Doug.
So it's a handshake connection on
Okay.
a column.
All right. Plan view.
Yeah. So
Connection like that.
it's actually an OSHA standard.
Clip angles or shear?
Clip
end plate?
angles.
Okay.
It's actually an OSHA standard, so again, a detailer that doesn't have the knowledge, a novice detailer wouldn't know that, yeah, if you look at a column in elevation now, that first bolt you put in can't be a shared connection. And so,
Bolt here.
here and there, correct.
There.
And so, having software that gives the intelligence to recognize these situations, understanding codes, OSHA codes, knowing that it's a handshake connection and there has to be a modification, certainly will help your beginner detailers understand it. They'll see why did it happen, maybe ask the question, instead of missing it in the field, because if you miss that one and it gets to the field, it can be a very expensive fix.
Or even, so I've found this myself a couple times, different things that have happened that I didn't even know why. In that member edit screen, you can, if you've got like a change by system, you can hit Y and it'll tell you it was either due to a load or a framing condition.
Sure.
But better yet, why has it failed? Why did I not get a connection there?
Yeah.
I can go in there, hit failed, it's gonna tell me, you know, what failed me. Was my load too high? Is this not gonna work out in the real world? Then I got a bigger problem. Now I need to make an RFI, go back to the engineer and say, hey, wait a minute, guys, this ain't gonna work. And that kind of helps be a crutch for you as you're learning how to be a detailer and how to model and
Certainly.
how to understand that information.
The intelligence works both ways, right?
Mhm.
Really intelligent people can have software do phenomenal things. Really good software can teach people how to be better at their job. It works both ways.
That's why I'm so good at my job.
Yeah.
All right, so clear this off, Doug. Let's go on to the next thing here. So one of the things that we're also seeing, just going to be a trend here as we continue down the road of material handling in the shop, is the guys in the shop that can load the truck.
Yeah.
Those guys are at the point they're retiring, and that knowledge is retiring with them. It's another thing where there's this huge base of knowledge with a group of people and not a whole lot of ability or other ways to train people up. It's not like you can go take a class on how to load a truck.
Yeah.
It's all earned in the field.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic, because some of you know, some of you don't. We came out with a truck loading tool, and so I've spent months and dozens, if probably short of hundreds, of fabricator offices talking about this product and just learning how differently all these fabricators load their trucks and how they're so dependent on a guy or two in the yard that loads them. And sometimes it's the gal in the office that tells you how much weight, and the guy in the yard kind of puts it together. And so I'd go have these discussions, and they're always really, every fabricator's got a real specific way on how they like to do this. And so you go through how they like to do it, and then you talk about our tool. And then a majority of them are like, this is a really good idea. Let's plan how we do this so we don't have to react how we do it. And then they realize that they don't have the right person to run the tool. Because the guy in the field or in the yard may not be quite technically capable, but the person in the office really isn't knowledgeable enough on what steel and the industry is, and so it gets kind of lost in this la-la land, and that's been a real interesting thing for a new product. So it's really kind of a groundbreaking product.
Right. But what's interesting about it is I've talked to a couple of the guys that have Fortosi and have been using it for a while. One of them has actually asked us not to talk about them because it's such an advantage for them. They don't want people to know where they're using it. Yeah. Another company, I'm just not going to name anybody names right now anyways, but another company, they don't have a scale on site, so they have to have, when a common carrier comes picks it up, they've got to take it off site, get weighed, come back and rearrange it and deal with it, but again, before it can go on its way or pull something off. Since they've been using Fortosi, they haven't had a single reordered load. Everything's been perfectly balanced every time.
Yeah. Like I said, a very interesting tool.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll change fabrication on
Right.
how you plan it. But it's introducing a new technology to an industry is certainly, it's fun to do, but it's interesting to see how it's adapted.
It is a paradigm shift.
It is,
for
it
people.
is.
It is completely educating fabricators on why this cost is of concern. Where are you gonna, you're fine now, but where are you gonna be in 2 or 3 years when your guy that knows how to do it retires?
Yeah.
And maybe didn't teach anybody else how to do it, so now you're gonna be behind while you've got the new guy learning how to figure out the loads. Or maybe they're just wasting your shop manager's time, who has to always go over and babysit the loading, instead of dealing with the rest of the things on the shop floor.
Yeah, and it's real interesting who does it. Like, so
Right.
sometimes I have company presidents
Mhm.
that will sit down and load the truck before fabrication, which schedules the fabrication. Very important, critical part of this process.
Right.
And sometimes they just blow the stuff out the door, put it in the yard, and Fred and the on a forklift will figure it out. And so I've seen both extremes. Everybody agrees that if you plan it, you can be more efficient.
Right. So, again, with the thought of how do we come out of this time ahead, looking at ways where you can retool your technology, this is one where
And
take it
it-
for a test drive.
And interestingly enough, I actually have some subcontract detailing customers that are loading trucks for fabricators.
Oh, really?
So they're using it as an additional service to fabricators that they work with routinely.
Yep. Well, and in the Streamus webinar we had last week, I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
So you can actually export your bill of lading from Streamus, bring that into Fortosi, combine that with the IFC from SDS2, get your load list, make sure there's a geometric fit, make sure it's all loaded on the trailer. If it doesn't, or you have to move things around, you can send that information back to Streamus. And SDS2 is actually now connected with the Streamus database, so we'll upload color coding, so you can see your truckloads in SDS2 based on that, and that's live. So if changes happen, you
And
can see it.
it goes back to ESTA modeling too. I have detailing customers, subcontract detailing customers that are offering
Yes.
estimating as a service for the fabricators they work with, because they can import the models or
Right.
build the models, run the connections to their specifications, and then give them all the material reports.
Right. Well, and especially subcontract detailers that are already working with specific fabricators.
Certainly.
Those guys are already adept at putting the model in. They've already got the fabricator set up, so it's all going to be optimized to the way the fab likes to build it anyways. Throw the model in quick, at least the structural, and you can get a pretty good cost, including the connections, out of the gates, maybe in a couple days, depending on the size of the project.
Yeah, it's a really good way to estimate. There's no question.
Which is a good way to, again, look for creative ways to come out of whatever this ends up being.
Yes.
A good way to come out of that with maybe some other ideas to help support your business.
Well, we're coming to the end, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for making us feel like you want to hear us.
Yeah, exactly.
We're lonely salespeople. But stay tuned, because we're going to have a social media contest. So watch our social media. Share with us your pictures of your work at home space, and we will share with you some free hand sanitizer.
So we're a detailing software company that specializes in connection design, and so connect is the word I want to use there. So you guys stay healthy, but stay connected, because it's that's important too.
Cheers. Virtual cheers.